Wait, you start?
I'm waiting, I know, you're just looking at me. Hello, I'm Rick and welcome to the Running Channel. Today, alongside my lovely wife Chantal, I'm going to be telling you how to get the best out of running while you're pregnant.
But hang on there, you're not actually pregnant.
Yeah, I can still do it.
Hi everyone, I'm Chantal and welcome to the Running Channel. I'm actually pregnant. And today, alongside my birthing partner and husband Rick, we'll be helping you to learn all about running while pregnant. We'll be joined by Olympian and sports scientist Professor Greg Whyte, OBE. He's the author of Bump It Up and the driving force behind many of those amazing sports relief challenges.
And don't forget, make sure you subscribe to the Running Channel and also hit that bell icon so you get notified when we upload videos just like this one.
So you just found out you're pregnant and you're a runner. Maybe you're like me and you run on a regular basis, and maybe you just go out once or twice a week, but surely you've got some concerns, because I know I do. How do you run safely? Is running safe for me and my baby? And how do you even run with this bump? So the first thing is you can still run, but there's no one size fits all. And although we're getting expert advice today, it's important to know that if you've got any concerns, you should see your GP or physio for some help. But there are a few tweaks and changes that you'll want to do to your running. Me at 5 months, I run very differently to how I did 3 months ago, and that will change again. Okay, so I'm a regular runner. I probably run about 4 or 5 times a week. And now that I'm 22 weeks pregnant, I'm about to head to the park to meet Professor Greg Whyte, who's an expert in this field, to ask him about all the questions I have about running while pregnant. So Greg, can I still run?
100% yes is the answer to that. There are obvious caveats to it. But if you are an experienced runner, if you ran before pregnancy and you have consistently run through pregnancy, then you can do that all the way through to term. And what that will mean actually is that you'll return to running postpartum after delivery quicker as well. Obviously, the key question really is should you start running when you become pregnant? And that's a slightly different question. For you as an experienced runner, yes, continue running. If you are pregnant and you're thinking about starting running, then really you should do it very carefully. You should do it very progressively, very slowly, and make sure you work on things like strength, pelvic floor strength, core stability before you start to run. But again, increase it progressively as you go during pregnancy.
But is running dangerous for the baby?
No is the answer to that. I mean, the two things you're thinking about. One is the health of the mother, obviously, and therefore one is the health of the baby. To some extent, as long as the mother is taking the right action when it comes to running. So in other words, making sure that it is safe to run, that they're doing it in a safe environment, that they're doing it at the right intensity for the right duration, making sure that they are stable, that they're strong, then actually there's no reason why it should be deleterious or problematic for the baby. And in fact, most of the evidence suggests that being physically active during pregnancy is healthy, is positive for the baby, it's positive for birth, and it's positive for recovery post-birth. Amazing.
Now, should I expect some negative reaction from other people? Because I have had a bit of that happen to me recently on my runs.
Well, it definitely is the answer to that. And I think it's very sad, because invariably those people who are passing on that negative, those negative impressions know very little about it. But equally, there's very little information in society about it. You know, should pregnant women be exercising? I think actually, in general, we're really not sure. The general public are not sure whether you should be exercising. But without any shadow of doubt, particularly around things like strength training, things like running, you will get odd looks. You will get people talk to you and ask you why you're doing that. But I think what you need to be is confident in what you're doing. Make sure you're doing it safely. If you know it's the right thing to do and you're doing it safely, then it's perfectly fine to do it.
100%. So throughout my pregnancy, all 3 trimesters, there's obviously going to be a lot of changes to my body and hormones. Can you talk us through some of those changes and what I can sort of expect?
Well, I mean, there's lots of things going on, both physically, in terms of hormone changes, but also mentally and emotionally. And some of those mental and emotional changes are driven by that physical and particularly the hormonal changes. So you can expect things to change as you go through pregnancy. We tend to partition them in trimesters into 1, 2, and 3. And along with that, what you're expecting to see is increase in weight, increase in size of bump. And because of that, you've got changes in center of gravity, changes in gait. You've got increased pressures on things like the pelvic floor, on the lower back, on the upper back, on the core. So there's lots and lots of changes taking place. The key to exercise in pregnancy is to effectively manage those changes and adapt your training accordingly. So in other words, as you go through pregnancy, the intensity of exercise that you're doing, in other words, the speed at which you're running, for example, will start to reduce throughout pregnancy as your weight increases and your center of gravity changes. As that happens, you have to increase the amount of strength work you're doing to stabilize the joints, to support that extra weight. You have to work very hard on the pelvic floor, on the core strength and stability. So really, there's lots of changes taking place. That's during pregnancy. Immediately post-pregnancy, so in that postpartum period, the 6 weeks of recovery, the dramatic changes. Instantly on delivery, we see hormonal changes. Instantly, things like progesterone and estrogen drop dramatically, precipitously. They have an effect on mental and emotional health. Also, other hormones like relaxin, which we're releasing throughout pregnancy and postpartum, they increase joint laxity. So again, we have to modify the type of exercise we're doing, reduce overreaching, overstretching throughout pregnancy. So the important thing is recognize the changes that are taking place and adapt your exercise appropriately to where you are in that pregnancy journey.
Okay, great. So is there a stage of my pregnancy where I need to stop running?
The answer to that question really is it's about you. And
Okay.
I think if you continue to feel comfortable, if you continue to be healthy throughout pregnancy, and if you are coping with running throughout pregnancy, then you can continue to run. But what you do have to do, it's that little term that we talk about often, that is listen to your body. And that's really important. So it's just making sure that you can cope with it. I think remember that things are changing dramatically, particularly when it comes to weight and the size of the bump and the gait, the change in center of gravity, which can often affect running. But the bottom line is keep an eye on it yourself. Think about how you feel, how you're coping with it. And if everything is going well, you can run all the way through pregnancy. And in fact, you can run all the way to term if it's working for you.
Okay, amazing. So one thing that you're going to have to change is how you prepare for your runs. And that includes what foods you eat and drink and how you warm up and cool down before your runs. So Greg, talk me through how I should prepare for my runs. What sort of stretching or should I do before I start my runs?
Well, the first thing to remember is that pregnancy is not a disease state.
That's good to know.
So it's a normal physiologic function. And to some extent, the preparation is almost identical to any run, whether you're pregnant or not pregnant. Of course, the key things to remember are that we want to avoid overheating. That's probably the golden rule.
Right.
So not too excessive a warm up. You have to think that the fetus itself has a core temperature which is 1 degree C above your core temperature. So they're already a little bit heated.
Yeah.
So avoid doing excessive warm up. When it comes to stretching, remember you've got lots of circulating relaxin that causes joint laxity. So again, don't overstretch. So what you're thinking about is everything in moderation. So it's a moderate intensity warm up, moderate duration, moderate intensity stretch before you start. And then on the way down, make sure that you do cool down. It's really important that you're not only cooling down for you, you're cooling down for the fetus, for your baby as well. And again, just really, it's about following what you know instinctively as being right if it's a normal run.
And should I be drinking more water now that I'm a pregnant runner?
Yes is the answer to that. I think what's really important as a pregnant runner, you have to think to yourself that the energy expenditure, because you're carrying extra weight, you're going to be expending more energy. Add on top of that, again, you really have to be careful to avoid overheating. So the one thing I would always say, if you're going out running, make sure you take fluids with you, make sure you take extra snacks with you, just in case, particularly if you're going longer. So to my mind, most people who are running try and keep it within 30 minutes. But if you're an experienced runner, a very experienced runner, you can go for longer, but you have to make sure that you fuel and fluid for those runs. So keep drinking and keep it with you when you're running.
And when I'm running, is it safe for me to get out of breath or should I be conscious not to overdo it on my runs?
Well, the golden rule on intensity is about moderate intensity. And we say that because evidence shows us that moderate intensity physical activity is safe for both mother and baby. What that means is it's a pace at which you can talk but not sing, in essence. In terms of rating of perceived exertion, it's around about 7 on a 10-point scale, which equates to somewhere in the region of 70 to 75% of heart rate max. Now, if you're a competitive runner who has run consistently throughout your pregnancy, there's good evidence to suggest that you can run up to 80, and in fact it's 81% of heart rate max. And you can do that all the way through. But the key to it is moderate intensity will keep you and the baby safe.
Good to know. So one other question is, will running do irreversible damage to my pelvic floor? And are there any sort of pieces of kit or clothing or support belts that I should be investing in now?
So the answer to those really is no in both counts, but critically it's about your control. You're in control of it. So for me, the absolute golden rule is pelvic floor, pelvic floor, pelvic floor. If you do nothing else throughout pregnancy, make sure you maintain the strength in that pelvic floor. It actually improves the birthing process. It gives you greater control of the pelvic floor and also accelerates recovery post-birth. So it's really important. If you maintain the strength of the pelvic floor throughout pregnancy, running is perfectly safe, perfectly fine on it, but you do have to focus on it. Add on top of that, things like 90% of women suffer low back pain during pregnancy. A lot of that is down to core strength and stability. So if you keep working on that core strength and stability, and in fact global strength, overall strength, then what you can do is you can avoid some of those problems that you could get during pregnancy because of the change in the center of gravity as the bump grows in front of you.
Yeah.
Probably the exception to that is one piece of equipment, and that is a really good sports bra. And I think that as the breasts grow, having greater support for them during running in particular can really reduce pain, reduce pressure on the upper back and on the lower back, and just make it a more pleasant experience.
And finally, Greg, after pregnancy, how long can I expect to get back to running? Or are there things that should happen before I can start exercising again?
Well, we call it the postpartum period, and effectively the way to think about that is rehabilitation, because childbirth is a massive physiological insult on your body, and so what you do have to do is you have to recover during that period. Now that postpartum period we tend to think lasts around about 6 weeks. So during that 6 weeks you can be physically active, but what you have to do is you have to think that you're starting again. So what you don't do is you're going to get straight back to running.
Right.
Remember that there's significant stress on the pelvic floor, so strengthening the pelvic floor before you start running again, very important to avoid stress incontinence and those type of issues. Add on top of that, you've still got lots of circulating relaxin, which is causing this joint laxity. And that has peaked just before delivery. So you really are lax post-pregnancy in this postpartum period. So be very careful about overstretching, about overextending, because it can lead to joint problems. So to some extent, the best way to think about it is 6 weeks of rehabilitation. That rehabilitation should be progressive as you build back to running. At the 6-week point, still remember that relaxin has an effect for up to 6 months postpartum, post-delivery. So just keep an eye on that joint laxity, on stretching and those type of things for 6 months. But otherwise, 6 weeks progression back to running, and then progress as you normally would.
That's good news.
So what have you changed about your running since you found out you were pregnant and have kind of developed on your pregnancy?
I think I've taken in some more water before and after runs. Definitely following Greg's advice, that's quite important. Also, I'm going to definitely increase the amount of pelvic floor exercises I do before and after the runs. And then the main thing I'm probably going to change is making sure I don't overexert myself on my runs, because I think that's quite important.
And do you feel kind of, as you've been running, you can feel the way that you're running when you're out has actually become different?
I can definitely feel and see the growing bump, as well as making things different on my runs. I also think that my stride has changed. So as Greg pointed out, I think it's good to accommodate for those changes and changing slightly your habits when you're running.
Greg, you're full of top advice.
So hopefully now you feel a little bit more confident running while pregnant.
Hang on, babe. Hopefully you, as a couple, feel more confident about running while pregnant. Don't forget, leave your comments in the section below and like and subscribe to the running channel, and we'll see you next time.
Hopefully with a bigger bump here, not there.
Thanks very much. Anyway, bye.